Kingston's. Okay, very good. I'm gonna start off the meeting and hand it over to Chief McNeely, and she's going to introduce the people presenting. Go ahead, Angie.
Great, thank you so much. So today I'd like to introduce Constable Vanessa Gerasimo to lead the presentation with respect to equity, diversity, inclusion, and indigenization. Vanessa is our Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Officer, who's part of our core unit. And this unit is overseen by Inspector Matt Funnell, Staff Sergeant Carla Stacey, and Sergeant Clem Nisanyagam. So I will let Vanessa take it away.
Hi, everyone. I'm sorry there's a bit of a shadow effect going on here with the lighting. I'm just trying to find my share screen. Lori, I know we just chatted about this. There we go. Let's see if this works. I'm going to get a PowerPoint up and running here. Oh, yeah, that's worse, Ash. Thanks for trying, though. We're working with the lighting here in the background. Host disabled participant screen sharing. Lori, do you think you can enable that for me?
Yeah, it's enabled. You should be good to go.
Okay, let me try it one more time.
But we are having some technical difficulties, as you're aware.
Yeah, it's still showing that it's disabled when I click on it, but
Okay, let me try again. Try again.
oh, there we go. We're in the game here. You tell me what you can see, just so I'm. How's that? Is that working for everyone?
Yep, you're good.
Okay, so like I said, I'm Vanessa Gerasimo. I'm the new EDI officer here with Kingston Police, part of the core unit, obviously. Thank you, Chief. Just a quick, I guess, intro for me. I'm super passionate about all EDI work and decided to apply for this position a couple months back, and it's been great. There's a lot of learning to do and a lot of ongoing discussions with different community members and different agencies. So it's been a big learning curve for me, taking a vested interest in a lot of this work on the side and then being able to incorporate it into my day-to-day at work has been nice. I've come from patrol, so 8 years on patrol with I started my career off in Coburg and I'm now here. So that's me in a nutshell. Brian McMillan was in this role prior to me in the startup. So Brian is part of our core unit as well and has helped develop a really solid foundation. And I've just been building on that. So I'll take you through some of the main things that I figured I'd focus on, because that's been the focus in the role just recently. And obviously having come into this role in March, I'm still in the beginning stages of seeing where we're going to take it in that sense, but lots of good things going on. So as some of you or most of you may know, everybody sees this okay. I don't know if it's in slideshow mode. I can change this for you. Is that better? There we go. Okay, so as most of you know, we have the Kingston Speaks Inclusion Project going on right now that started back in 2021. Due to COVID, things were a little bit delayed, but in partnership with KCHC and Queen's researcher Giselle, she's been helping us out a lot at getting all the feedback through different mediums. So community consultations and this survey. And she's been collecting all this feedback of how we can become more equitable and inclusive. So coming into this role, Brian had debriefed me on some of the things going on, but it was still in its infancy. And now it's progressed and it's made its way to stage 2, 3, where we're getting some recommendations sent our way informally, and we're building on making more of formal recommendations for the chief and for the organization. So the set of recommendations obviously are going to be made to Kingston Police, and then two-handedly here with the creation of an external chief of police community inclusion council. So obviously that's through our chief of police, McNeely, and then an internal EDI working group that's going to be led by me in some sense, but mainly just led by our members to try to increase inclusivity and representation, and giving our members a voice to share information and share any input they may have on anything that fits under our EDI lens. So that's going on. Some of the emerging themes that have come out, and I've had some contact with our researcher to help make sure that these themes that are coming out of the research and out of the data that's been collected is to make sure that we're tailoring them to our organization. So we have a pretty good partnership going on where she might call me, or when we meet, and she'll say like, how does this work? Or how does the chain of command work? Or how does your budget work? And if I don't have the answer, I can make sure to get it through the appropriate chains. So some of the main themes coming up from the research and from the community feedback are the ones that I've listed here. So recruitment and representation, training and professional development, retention and support systems, internal culture, community interactions, community outreach, and communication and transparency. So with those recommendations, and we're still gathering some data as well they are. So we are scheduled to meet next week just to formalize some of this and then keep going along with the project. But these are some of the things that have been coming up. And the way I sort of have seen this whole KSI project is that it's pretty broad. And if you think of EDI, obviously we know that EDI is being implemented and approached in different ways through different organizations across the world, really. Our focus with Kingston Police is that it's going to hit and impact all different sectors. So from an EDI lens, and myself as a constable, I'm not expected to do all this by myself, but you start to think of bigger themes like communication and transparency, or representation, or training and culture, and you start to see of where we can sort of put our focus. And as a team and as an organization, I think those recommendations are going to be tailored to certain things. So if you think of, for example, communication and transparency, that goes for internal and external. So maybe increasing media posts, or our media officers changing that approach, or even internal communications, which we've already started doing in a variety of ways. So that just sort of is a brief outlook on some of the things on our end. My role specifically, again, I see it as a two-pronged approach where at this point, in conjunction with the KSI survey and feedback and collection, on a day-to-day, we have hate crime investigations that are taking place and reported to our crime investigations, or to frontline through patrol. And part of my role as the EDI officer is to conduct reassurance follow-ups with victims of any types of hate crimes. So it's another way of outreaching to the community and making sure that these victims feel supported. Most often they're from some of our marginalized communities, racialized communities, and making sure that we increase that communication so that different communities feel comfortable coming to us. From some of these follow-ups, I've been able to connect with different individuals, and they've sort of led me to bigger community issues, or led me to leaders within different communities to make sure that we can work together to increase that communication. So in that role specifically, there's ongoing communication with Frontline and with our detective unit, just to make sure that we're bridging gaps and we're making sure that no one's falling through the cracks. On the other side of things, there's a community outreach and community interactions. So I've spent a lot of my time just in the startup of my part in this role is reaching out to the community and building relationships with different members within the community and different organizations. So started off with an introduction to a variety of agencies, just making myself available. And then I've just sort of been building off of that framework. And Brian had established some of those relationships, which has made it easier to do with some communities as well. And then that's going to lead to the internal inclusion committee, where we'll have 15 to 20 sworn and civilian members that can actually help with that input. And maybe one of our members has a connection in a different community, and we can build on that as well. Like I said, I don't think EDI in general can be tackled by one person. I think it's a team effort, and the entire community is working towards bigger things. So hate crime stats, I just did a quick search on from 2021 to 2022, we had 49 occurrences that were flagged as hate crime incidents or occurrences. This year so far, we've had a total of 24. And in those occurrences, whenever applicable, I've been doing those reassurance follow-ups. So that's been quite efficient. And I added to this as well, when you think of hate crime, obviously provincially, There are different hate crimes going on across the province and across the country. But through the hate crime extremism investigative team, I'm a member of those meetings, and it is nice to be able to share some information at that provincial level and make sure we're not missing any big themes going on or anything that we might not be aware of in Kingston, but maybe it's going on in Toronto and it's coming our way. Additionally, with the EDI committee provincially, that's where a lot of our information sharing happens, to just make sure that we're not missing anything at the Kingston level, and to make sure that from the policing perspective, we're maybe adopting some practices or other things that might come up in other organizations that are similar sizes. When I think of my role specifically, as I said, it is far reaching. And initially, I think I was a little overwhelmed because there's so many places and ways you can take the role. But really, we want to make sure that internally our members feel supported and that we're applying that EDI lens to the internal organization as well as within the community. So one of my biggest things initially was making sure that I was going to patrol and to members within our agency and getting the same information and feedback alongside Giselle's feedback in the community to see how we could tailor things according to what the needs are within the organization. So I think we're working as a bigger team, and that goes all the way up the chain to make sure that the recommendations fit for our members. So I've done all the patrol lineups, gotten some pretty good information there. And then I've also put out a member feedback form that's an anonymous survey style, but it's more just a forum where members can put whatever input they want on there and remain anonymous if they want, just to increase that inclusivity and that representation. And then hopefully we develop a set of theories or themes around that feedback, and then we can put that in conjunction with the KSI survey. And we're just building that internal capacity, right? We're getting people talking, getting people discussing what's going on, and making sure that we're not missing anything. So I've highlighted a couple things that I think are important within that from that EDI lens, is just to have that ongoing communication with members to increase transparency, and then creating safe space for people to engage in that. So some people didn't really want to speak up at lineup, but then they had the option to go through the anonymous channel for that feedback. And then with the internal inclusion committee, any member can bring forth any issues they may have, or maybe send them through different chains to make sure we're getting that. I think that's pretty much it on that one. And then the other big goal for me, and this has been where I've spent a lot of my time as well, is building the community relationships and education with the public. So if you think of some of the agencies, I just listed them there on the left-hand side, but St. Lawrence has a newcomers group, and we've been doing education. Brian had started that off, so I'm just continuing that. ISCA as well, some religious denominations, the Black communities, Indigenous communities, etc. So going down that list, those are some of the main agencies that I've reached out to and have increased relationships and dialogue with these agencies to make sure that from our perspective, we're covering things properly. And then that goes in also to making sure that I'm trained and educated and getting opportunities to make sure that I learn as much as I can in this role. And it's constantly, the way I see EDI in general is that it's not just a checkbox that you could say, oh, I've done EDI and it's done with. We all know that it's part of a bigger strategy where things just sort of become implemented and grow as society grows. So that's the overall goal. But looking at the reassurance program and the referral system that we have there just increases some of the support systems. And then also as the core unit, we do attend a lot of coordinated events that are from different agencies. So even something like Eid, let's say for the Islamic community, just having some of our members there and present, that just increased some representation from us and some dialogue with different communities. And then looking ahead to try to plan for different events coming up and media releases and make sure that we're not missing anyone. And from a hate crime education and policing in Ontario, just that bigger framework. And then provincial representation, again, like I said, the EDI working group has been really helpful to just bounce ideas off of different EDI officers across the province. And Serving with Pride also is a provincial group that is working with the 2S LGBTQ community. So I'm working with them as well, and just trying to learn as much as we can and make sure that we're staying up to date and up to par on things. That's pretty much it. The last slide I just put here is just, I do think it's really important that we're increasing that awareness and education and creating somewhat of the EDI sponsors or allies within our community and beyond. But when we're looking at our organization, you think of some of our rookies coming in, we do a bit of EDI training with them and take them across the city and try to stop at various religious denominations, and just so they know what's around. We also go to the local shelters so that they're aware of what's here. Coach officers, media officers, core leadership, certain Coast, our mental health response, just thinking a little bit broader how we can just slowly start getting things going on that and build. And then again, I'm a visual person, so when I think of this role specifically, it just keeps going, and I think it really is about mutual understanding and working together with other units, with other people, and internally and within the community. So this kind of sums it up, where the internal EDI committee will be something that I'll be able to steer a little bit with our members, and they can steer it where they see the need or the gaps. And then together we can sort of build on a lot of the other things here. So the community outreach and some of the reassurance programs and all the other things. So that's how I would see the entire role looking, but that's pretty much it from my end. I think that is my last slide, but I don't know if any of you have any questions, concerns, comments. I'm trying to stop sharing this here.
Christian, go ahead. Thank you, Vanessa, very much.
Thanks.
Christian, you had a question?
Yeah, it's an excellent initiative, and of course timely, both in terms of the immediate news cycle and sort of broader societal priorities. So I just have a couple of questions for you. One is, of course, the classic legal and constitutional element of diversity in Canada is language. And so I didn't hear anything about language. Kingston is one of 25 communities in Ontario that is designated as a bilingual community in terms of provincial services. Since policing is provincially regulated, I was just hoping you could expand for me on what Kingston Police has already done and is doing, and as part of this initiative, perhaps intends to do to I guess also address linguistic diversity in both official languages. My second question is, there's of course a policy approach that is now well entrenched. It is part of every piece of policy that is developed at the federal level, the GBA. Plus analysis, gender-based analysis, to what extent gender-based analysis does or does not guide decision-making and policy-making within Kingston Police. The third is, I didn't see a conceptualization or a definition of EDI. So those are terms that I think are very broadly used, but I think they mean very different things to different people. We also know that there are different legal interpretations of what this actually entails. So I was hoping that you could operationalize the terminology for me a bit. And then the last is, to what extent, what ability we have to make measurable the efforts that are underway. That is to say, sort of where we are at and where, for instance, a year from now, you hope we might be able to get with this initiative, and how we know that those goals are actually being achieved.
Hope
Okay.
you're able to write that down, Vanessa.
Yeah, I'm jotting down as he's just speaking. Thank you, Christian. And I'm assuming the chief will probably jump in on some of this, because I think, as I've said, with the chain of command, I'm at the constable level in the core unit, but I'm sure the chief and the deputy can jump in if need be. Christian, let me start just with language. Obviously, we are very diverse within Kingston. I do speak French and Spanish as well. And I would encourage that we have things in numerous languages in general. I think from my perspective within Kingston Police, I don't even get to use my French and Spanish as much as I wish I could. But we also have translators available to us on hand at the patrol level at all times. So we do have that available. The other thing that I'm working on right now is to develop basically a hate crime info sharing. And that's going to be translated into different languages. And I know some communities have voiced an interest in that. So we're working on that. It's a work in progress, but and I don't know if that's specifically answering your question, but I know that it is important that we're at least able to, some of our officers speak different languages as well. So that helps. I think we have to be able to translate or to speak or to have the right resources. So I know we have those on hand, and I don't know if the chief has anything to add on the language part, and I'll try to hit the other ones if I'm missing anything on that. When it comes to gender-based analysis or anything to do with gender, that's above, I'm not going to say above where I'm at, but as a female in policing, obviously, you know, it's a male-dominated sphere, but I think we do our work at recruiting the officers that we recruit, male, female, regardless, just making sure that there's certain criteria for the hiring process. And I'm not sure how much detail we go into on that front or what the gender-based analysis looks like. And maybe the chief can jump in on that as a woman chief as well. EDI definition, again, I had trouble. Well, I'm constantly faced with this. I think when you think of EDI, and it's become somewhat of a quote unquote buzzword within different communities and different agencies. So my biggest thing from the patrol level and from the core level is to make sure that it's more than just saying equity, diversity, inclusion. Some communities don't like some of those terms too. Some people, you know, I was just in a Islamophobia workshop yesterday, and one of the ladies there was mentioning inclusion. Like inclusion doesn't really, it doesn't sound right. It's not the right language around that, because it's assuming that the people are the leaders, and again, we're not choosing the right language around inclusivity. So that's come up. Right now the role is called the EDI role. I kind of even have said, you know, we have EDIIA too that's come up. So with the indigenization and accessibility components there. But for me at this level, I'm looking for that feedback from communities and from different individuals to see what people would want to see in this community. And then I'm passing that up the chain to see how we can improve and make ourselves better as an organization. So that's my view on that. And then when it comes to goals, long-term and short-term, obviously this KSI inclusion project is just one component of the role. There's a lot of other things going on. The goal is that once we get these recommendations, they are going to be measured with whatever the results are. So those are going to be some measurable outcomes, to my understanding, from an internal perspective, but also within the community, just in informal conversations as well. I'm looking for that feedback to say, how can we be better? And a lot of it in this realm isn't necessarily measurable from a stats perspective, in my opinion, but I've had members of the community say like, wow, I didn't realize that you had this. I didn't realize you had core, didn't realize that we could be supported through this or this channel. And those are some of the things that aren't maybe measurable, but from my perspective at the constable level, it's having that impact and making sure that we're supporting our community through the right channels and in every way that we can. And like I said, bridging some of the gaps and making sure that people aren't falling between those cracks. So that's my view on that, but I'm sure the chief can jump in at that organizational level as well, because she'd have more on that.
Yes, thank you so much for the questions. Certainly when we're looking at gender analysis and how we're doing our recruitment, I mean, it's very important for us that we're being inclusive of and being representative of people, members within our community. So obviously that's what we're looking towards. At this point in time, we have about 20% females within the organization, 4% racialized members, and 1% that are self-identify as Indigenous. Certainly, we are, looking to target, a variety of areas to increase recruitment, whether that's looking at women in specific, looking at youth in general, getting them interested in community in our organization through the YIPI program and other programs that the youth meetings that our core members go to and our school resource officers attend, and certainly outreach that Vanessa does to our racialized community and other communities that we really want to, highlight what the good work that policing does, and see if that matches with what incentives to come into our organization. And part of that is being holistic in terms of our organization. It's one thing to attract diversity, but it's also there to be inclusive and retain and have those retentions built in as well, and having those programs such as an EDI internal committee to ensure that if there are issues that are arising, that we address them, and the good ideas that come from the EDI internal committee are going to be helpful. They're going to be developing their terms of reference. So really working from the grassroots up to inform us as to the needs within our organization. And of course, the Community Inclusion Council, which we're looking to develop, is yet to come. And that will be another information sense for us at the leadership level and throughout the entire organization. In terms of the Kingston Speaks Inclusion, we're looking at, that is something that we're going to be part of what's going to be forming our strategic plan for 2023-2026, and it'll all be brought together at the retreat with the board, along with all the focus group sessions that are being done as well for our strategic planning. So at that point, we'll be able to have build many of these objectives that will be coming into the future with measurable outcomes. So those are yet to be determined once we build that into our strategic plan. So we'll be very mindful of how to measure and how we can measure our progress. And again, some of that will be looking at our, the statistics within our own organization in terms of the number of females, visible minority, Indigenous members that we have through surveys, those kinds of things. In terms of languages that are being spoken within, we do keep track of that. And, when we have our new recruits and our members, I try and highlight the different kinds of languages that are spoken. So we do have obviously English and French. We've got Spanish, we have Mandarin, we have Serbian, Greek, to name but a few of the languages that have been spoken by a number of our recruits that have been hired. So again, I highlight that in the bios that we are highlighting, and we obviously keep track of that as well.
Thanks, Angie. Councillor Doherty.
Thanks, Chair. And thanks for your presentation. Unfortunately, my computer crashed, so I missed some of it, and I'll have to go back and look at the recording. But so you may have addressed this, but it's also a definition question. And what's your definition of hate crime? Like, what constitutes a hate crime?
Hi, Councillor. So from my perspective, again, a hate crime only falls under a couple categories within the criminal code. So there needs to be some type of public incitement of hate, and that's the criminal code definition and our authorities under hate crime for federal criminal code penalties and charges. However, I think that the information that I'm trying to get out to the community and make sure that people understand is I've had different individuals in our community take, for example, one East Indian male on a transit bus, and racial slurs were thrown his way, let's say. And he at that point, it was actually reported by another witness to the incident, right? So in situations like that, oftentimes, if it doesn't reach the criminal code of a hate crime, sometimes we can still proceed with something else. So I've said that to our members in the community that have actually reported things, or other leaders within some of our marginalized or racialized communities that have said, like, like for the Islamic community, let's say, One hijabi woman mentioned that somebody, maybe tried to rip her hijab off, or they were yelling things out to her on the street. Well, those still are hate related incidents and they still need to be reported to police. So making sure that we're increasing that public awareness so that individuals feel, number one, comfortable calling police, and number two, realize that we still take those incidents very seriously. That's the priority. So even if it's not criminal code related to those incidents, we have harassment, we have mischief, we have, those are the two big ones I find that we would use. I'm trying to think of anything else that comes up, but even for mischief around the community, I know we said there's a bit of a rise in some of the mischief in the community, but those can't be missed if there are any type of hate symbols, then they have to be reported to, well, they don't have to, but they should be reported to police. So increasing that awareness and making sure that we're supporting individuals. So I would say in black and white, yes, hate crime has its definition in the criminal code, but there's a big gray zone in that where we're still supporting our communities through different channels and making sure that we're finding creative ways, either through the criminal code, through other charges like mischief or harassment, or even a cause disturbance type of charge. And then from there, we can still support our communities. And if there aren't grounds at all for criminal charges, I'm still doing follow-ups on those individuals and the victims that are calling in to make sure that we're not missing something, maybe a bigger picture. So that's where I'm coming from. But Chief, I think you're jumping in there.
There are limited sections that are defined within the criminal code specifically, but when Vanessa's talking about whether it's assault charges or mischief charges, when it is motivated by hate, certainly there are mitigating that increases the mitigation for penalty sections within the through the court system as well. So just wanted to add that little piece as well.
Thanks for that. So a couple of follow-up questions. The inclusion, and I guess hate can grow, going unchecked, it will grow. So it's important to be active in prevention as well. And the inclusion, I just wonder if that also includes the unhoused population. I got a disturbed call a few weeks ago where some teenagers were actually throwing things at unhoused people, which was very disturbing. So that I would say would be part of this too, I would hope, but I wonder if you could speak to that.
Yes, so I think what I've been a big proponent of and an advocate is that we're very big on focusing on some of our marginalized or racialized communities, but the most vulnerable and marginalized community that we often miss in not just our community, but across Ontario and Canada are unhoused or people that are experiencing homelessness and people using substances. We're missing that population in some of our discussions. So I have put that on my mandate and on part of my day-to-day role to make sure that that we increase voices within those communities as well. So reaching out to some of the advocates in the community and then beyond, even people with lived experience, to make sure that those voices are being heard. And again, it's just one aspect, but absolutely, that's still fitting under my EDI lens and realm. And as a community, I think we're trying to do what we can.
The only other piece for that too is with Kingston Speaks Inclusion, their focus groups, they have had focus group sessions with staff and clientele, whether it's of the integrated care hub or the marginalized communities, so that we have input, which will also help inform us with our strategic plan as well. So those voices will be heard in that aspect as well.
Thanks.
And even adding to that, when I spoke to the researcher, she did mention that she reached out to the communities through their organization. So through the ICH, like the chief was saying, and even the warming center or whatnot, but they're actually going to go a step beyond that. And they're going to try to coordinate visits even through some of the encampments across the city to make sure that we're increasing that voice, which is great too. Because I recommended that. I said, it's good that we're looking at the relationships that we have with their staff, or that we have with those individuals, but making sure that we're increasing that channel to give those individuals a voice as well.
Question, just out of curiosity, this is for Vanessa. So you say you mentioned a couple of times the Islamic community. So when they have a big event and it's asked for police services to be there or to be present or seen, do we ask Islamic members of the association to do that, or is it just by whoever's working that day?
Sorry, do you mean Islamic members within our service?
That's just the example. Yeah, like, so
Okay.
if it was like the Islamic community having an event, do we have the membership people that are Islamic go to that event so that they would know people and that there'd be stronger ties and stronger communication?
I think from the core perspective is we try to get involved in as many community events as we can. And sometimes it's not even a request. It's more we know that something's coming up, like Ramadan and Eid, for example, just to take the Islamic community. And when they put the invite out to us, but I know other events that might not be the case, but we'll reach out or I'll reach out to them and say, hey, I know this is coming up. Do you want police presence? If you do, are you comfortable with us being uniform or out of uniform, et cetera? So we've some populations or groups might say, you know what, we this is just a local thing, it's just a community-based thing. Others have said yes, some in uniform, out of uniform. So I think it's really being able to tailor that accordingly for our presence. But then internally, our members, depending on what community we're working with, in my personal view, I've said, let's just extend the invite out to all members, because I'm very aware of not tokenizing certain members that we do have that may be in the communities. But on the flip side, I do believe that if we have certain connections, even through the internal committee, right, the working group, if those things are coming up, then some of our members, I've had some members say, hey, Vanessa, I have, a member, or I'm a member of this community and this has come up. So I have this connection. And then we're working together, but we're also not tokenizing our members in that sense either.
Makes sense. Okay, thanks. Any other questions? All right, then, Vanessa, well done. It was very educational. Thank you. And thanks for your time. Thanks for sharing.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. Have a good day, everyone.
Oh, sorry, Christian.
No, that was just my clap.
Oh.
Bye. Have a good day, everyone.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Vanessa.
No worries.
Okay, so then we are now going to continue with the meeting. Chief McNeely, thanks for putting that together. That was very good. Is there a disclosure of conflict of interest? Okay. May I get an approval of the agenda? Jeff, Bridget, all in favor? Very good. Oh, I should mention, Jimmy is not here today. He's helping family members, but no, I've had illness. So it's just the four of us for participation. Okay, and so that was good. Next is adoption of the minutes of meeting 2208 held on May 19th, 2022. Be adopted. Bridget, Jeff, all in favor? Thank you very much. And then I'm going to ask if anyone has any questions with respect to the following communications received by the Ministry of the Attorney General, Association of the Police Services Boards, and the Ontario Human Rights Commission. Nope. Okay, then we're going to move forward. And is there any delegations? No. Is there any reports? No. And then we're going to do motions. The motion is that, subject to the approval of the Ministry of the Solicitor General, the Kingston Police Services Board reappoint Zachary Stephen Griffin, John Donald Knight, Christopher Alexander McPhee, Michael Jordan Scott, Tracy Lynn Swift, and Chad Mandingo as special constables of the Kingston Police for purpose of searching, guarding, and controlling of prisoners, providing security at premises or places occupied or utilized as court services of summons, subpoenas, and other legal documents in the counties of Frontenac and Lennox and Addington, transporting prisoners and executing warrants of committal within the Province of Ontario, providing crime scene security and assisting with traffic direction under the superior supervision of a police officer. Angie, I hope I didn't take your thunder there. Were you going to read that?
You did a fine job.
Thank you. Then may I have a firster and a seconder on that? Jeff? Seconder. Okay, Bridget, thank you very much. All in favor?
Just a
Very
point of
good.
discussion there, Chair.
Yes, please.
So these are tasks that in other jurisdictions such as Alberta are at times before performed by contractors. What remit the chief sees within the current provisions of the contracting rules within the province of Ontario and the Police Services Act to consider alternative service delivery models for those functions that do not legally require to be performed by a sworn uniformed member.
Chief?
Sorry, I'm just, can you just specify
I
the
lost
point
you.
of the question? I just wanted to.
Yeah, so there's a lot of conversation within policing in Canada on alternative service delivery and alternative service delivery models. There's some debate in Ontario about what this means within the provisions of the Police Services Act and the contracting rules within the province of Ontario. But there are different models for providing these types of services. Not all of these models necessarily rely on special constables. In some jurisdictions, such as Alberta, for instance, they've long been provided by other service providers. What considerations Kingston Police is currently giving to exploring different alternative models to ensure the most efficient and effective outcomes for service delivery that does not require a full sworn uniformed member.
Sure. So our special constables are not sworn, they're civilian. So these are civilian members of our police agency, and the jobs that are being described here are jobs that can be done by police officers. And we've chosen that these are jobs that can be done by the civilian, which aren't paid at the same salary level as a sworn officer. So when we're looking at, in terms of crime scene security and assisting with traffic direction under the supervision of a police officer, these are really diverting things that have been done by policing and diverting it to the civilian component within our organization. Certainly, there are times when the municipality may have areas that might have utilize security guards rather than the use of police officers, and that is something that has definitely been used within our community where policing aren't used, and it's put to the hands of themselves to hire security guards and those kinds of things. So this is really civilianizing some of the areas so that our police officers aren't necessarily doing those duties and are going to priority 1s and 2 calls for service, which they should be. And as you know, with other areas where we're looking at partnering with our community partners to respond to calls for service, we've certainly reached out in terms of our addictions and mental health persons, our crisis response for the lower priority calls for service that aren't a public safety risk, which they will be responding to calls for service. So we're really looking at our partners to be able to divert calls for service to other areas. Bylaws, another example, civilianizing, where we really rely on our bylaw officers to respond to calls for service that our police officers don't have to respond to. So we are very much looking at that, and it is something that's always top of mind for us.
Right, so that's all very very helpful and commendable. What we have is the model that you've chosen is a civilianization model, which I mean a number of other services have been driving, some more, some less aggressively. What I didn't hear from you was an alternative service delivery model for some of these functions, for functions that do not require to be performed. And there are trade-offs, of course, in terms of civilianizing a function versus resorting to an alternative service delivery model. But I'm just curious whether under your management, the service is or has actively explored the efficiency and effectiveness trade-offs, moving from a civilianization model to an alternative service delivery model.
Yep, so the alternative service delivery model would be our bylaw officers that are responding. It's our addictions, mental health that are responding to the crisis calls for service that aren't a public safety risk. So they're responding instead of police. So those, to me, are alternative response models. It's our outreach workers from home-based housing that are responding to maybe some of the behaviors that are happening in different areas within our community, which may involve de-escalation through crisis outreach. So our home-based housing workers. So those are alternative models rather than the police responding. So we've certainly looked at alternative delivery models and incorporated that. And I'm sure there's many more opportunities that will come through our new strategic plan and business planning as we look at the focus group sessions. But building on those alternative models are important. And it's not just civilianization, but utilizing our partners for different ways. And as I mentioned to you, the different group 4 and the different security guards are options for that can be used as well by for certain functions.
Yeah, so we can leave the conversation here, but the functions that are outlined here, most of the functions that are outlined here are also in this particular motion are open to alternative service delivery, not just civilianization. So, and as I say, there's trade-offs involved in that, but perhaps something in conversation we can return to at a future state.
Sure, thank you.
Is there so just out of curiosity, Christian, are you bringing this up in the way you did? Are you saying there's a problem with the way things are working right now?
No, not at all. I'm just trying to make sure that in terms of the effectiveness and efficiency of the probity of the way we spend public funds, we explore all the models that are available to us. We assess the trade-offs of those models in terms of efficiency, effectiveness, as well as other values we might want to apply, and then operationalize those models. And for instance, there are jurisdictions that were prisoner transport, guarding prisoners and so forth, is being done by contractors. So I'm not saying that this is the best model for Kingston, but I just want to make sure we keep all options open and we have a systematic approach to the way we opt to move services that are not legally required to be performed by sworn uniformed members to other delivery models.
And
Okay,
the
good.
only thing I didn't answer to you is in terms of the prisoner transportation. As you know, the ministry undertook a company to take a look at alternative models for prisoner transportation. And at this point, you know, that's where our special constables are being utilized for that until there's a different method that is suggested through the ministry.
Okay, great. So that's just what I'm hoping for,
Yeah.
that we're keeping our eye on
Yep.
on the options that are being offered by the within this provincial jurisdiction.
Yep, and we're guided a lot by our Police Services Act as to what can and cannot be done as well. So we're certainly there looking at efficiencies. And of course, sometimes, you know, some of these some of the jobs too are things that can be done with members that maybe have different functionalities that are available to them that maybe can't go to frontline, but can actually facilitate other jobs in these areas. So we still really need to have, can't be so efficient that we reduce the amount of work that can be done by members that have different functionality and being able to do different things. So we have to keep that in mind too.
Right. So effectiveness is an important part. It can't always just be about saving money. Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you.
Very good. Okay, next is that the Kingston Police Services Board, appoint Bradley Barkley as an officer of the Kingston Police effective June 27th, 2022. First, seconder, good. Jeff, Bridget, all in favor? Great, thank you.
I thought that maybe the deputy could maybe give you a bit of a bio for
I
Brad
would like that
Barkley.
very much, please.
Certainly. Constable Bradley Barkley joins Kingston Police after over 2 years with the Halton Police. Hailing from Mallorytown, Ontario, of course, just up the road, Bradley volunteered as a firefighter with the Front of Young Fire Department and as a volleyball coach at Thousand Islands Secondary School. He also volunteered with the Brockville Police for their Halloween patrol in 2016 and 2017. Shortly after finishing high school, he obtained a Police Foundations diploma from St. Lawrence College and was placed on the Dean's List for academic achievement. We're excited to welcome Bradley to the Kingston Police.
Thank you. And then may I ask for the staffing updates?
You're on mute.
Thank you. So I'd like to be able to talk about Staff Sergeant Brian Peet, who has been promoted to the rank of inspector effective May the 6th, 2022. And just a brief bio of Brian. He commenced his policing career with the Peel Regional Police in October 1999 after obtaining a Bachelor of Education degree from McGill, and joined the Kingston Police in December of 2001. He was promoted to sergeant in January of 2010 and to staff sergeant in January of 2017, and has been assigned to various duties within uniform patrol, criminal investigations, which includes cold case, which was created in 2006, and special services and the court services. He was presented with the 2010 Kingston Police Leadership Award for fostering an atmosphere of trust and professionalism. As Inspector, Brian is in charge of our Investigation Services Division, which is comprised of the Criminal Investigation Unit and Special Services. And then second is Sergeant Jeff Thompson, and he has been promoted to the rank of Staff Sergeant effective May the 6th, 2022. So Jeff started his policing career with the Kingston Police in 2003 after attaining a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science from Queen's University. He was promoted to Sergeant in 2018 and has been assigned to Uniform Patrol, Criminal Investigations, Special Services, Communications, and most recently Professional Standards and Quality Assurance throughout his nearly 20 years career. From January of 2014 to February of 2015, he was seconded to the Correctional Services of Canada, acting as the Community Correction Liaison Officer. As Staff Sergeant, he is in charge of the Professional Standards Unit.
Thank you for that, and congratulations to them both. Is there any new business? No? Okay, then I'm gonna ask to move in camera. May I have a firster and a seconder? Bridget, Jeff, all in favor? Very good. And so we say a 5-minute break. Okay. I'll see everyone in the next room. Thank you.